Hi, my name is Brian Fox. I recently sat down with all 9 town council and school committee candidates to learn more about them. Questions were developed by myself and members of the Wakefield, Massachusetts Community Page Facebook group and were not reviewed by WCAT, and no candidate was provided a final list of questions ahead of time. For preparation, I reviewed all 9 candidates' voting and town census records back to 2016, looked at posts on local Facebook groups, campaign pages, conducted online searches, and read the Wakefield Daily Item. These interviews were not done at the request of WCAT, and the views expressed are my own as an individual. Lastly, thank you to WCAT for helping me with this huge undertaking, and thank you to all the candidates who are running for a volunteer position in our town. Okay, joining me tonight is Stephen Ingalls. He's one of the candidates for the 3-year school committee seat. So welcome, Stephen. How are you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome. Is this your first time running for an elected office?
It is my first time running for an elected office.
How do you think it's going so far?
So far, it's going really well. I'm enjoying it. I got my first letter from a potential voter, a new potential voter, a senior at the high school today. And I got to say, that's been a highlight. So she recognized that I was in an uncontested seat, but still wanted to reach out and sort of get my take on some issues. Obviously, being a high school student. And I just thought that was fantastic. So you just caught me on
really
a very good day, because that was awesome.
That's great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Stephen Ingalls. My wife and I lived in Wakefield for approximately 14 years, give or take. We have 2 small kids in the Woodville Elementary in kindergarten and 2nd grade. Really have come to love Woodville. I think what happened to us is what happens to maybe if you didn't necessarily grow up here, but as a parent with kids in the system or whatnot, you meet other parents. It sort of gets you a deep dive into the community. We've been to a few events, around town, whether it was Blossoms or, some of the jazz nights, the 4th of July, obviously. But it really wasn't until we had kids in the school system that we got sort of a deep look into the community and how strong it was, and developed a lot of those sort of strong bonds that we've come to sort of cherish. So that's kind of how we are here today. I myself grew up in Belmont, which is probably 20 minutes away, a little sort of northwesterly of Boston. Grew up there, ended up doing some college, came back, did some work at a sort of a vocational institute for people with special needs. Decided that I was going to do a career change, went into the electricians union, 103, for about 20 years, and recently decided to make a career change from that. So I've been working at Biogen Pharmaceutical for the past 2 years, and really enjoying that, and the flexibility that sort of gives me in that role. Not being locked into that 7 to 3 construction schedule allows me to be a little bit more flexible with my time and do things like, maybe it's PTO or running for school committee and I've just been really enjoying it.
So what Wakefield organizations have you been involved in?
Oh, I do the PTO at the Woodville. I've been doing that for about 3 years. I volunteered for a year, and then I've been on the board for 2. And then I've coached Little League, doing mostly T-ball. I don't hazard to try and go any higher than that, because I don't actually have any baseball skill. And I was told that I could do very little to mess the children up in T-ball. So as long as everyone walked around the bases, I was okay. And then once we started progressing beyond that, I decided the role of assistant coach is probably my pinnacle. From there, I can collect the bases and tell the kids to run. And so, and that's sort of been the most of the sort of high, I don't know if you call it high, like that type of stuff, direct community involvement.
The fact that you have any is honestly good. I mean, so that, more than most, let's put it that way. So that's very good.
So
Can you hit off the tee, or is that why you can't coach any higher? You can't hit up the tee, or?
I think after you hit off the tee, you go to coach's pitch. And thankfully, there have been no lawsuits about me hitting small children, which is great. Past that, I feel bad if I can't teach a kid to properly swing a bat or throw a ball with all of the right mechanics, then I would much rather just sort of step aside and let the professionals take over.
I'm sure there's plenty of those that'll help out.
There are a number in these leagues.
So there's three possible school committee term lengths this year. It's an anomaly.
Yep.
So there's 3-year, 2-year, or 1 year. Why did you choose to run for the full 3-year and not one of the others?
I think if I ran for the 1 or the 2-year, I was concerned with I wouldn't be able to be as focused in what the issues would be. I think that there's a lot of issues that we're coming up with. You know, obviously COVID, the return to school. There are so many big things going on that if I went for a shorter term, I'd be worried about things like, I don't know, re-election, or maybe that's just an urban myth, but I wanted to be able to stay focused as long as possible on sort of the long view of where the district needed to be and where I could provide the most good. So I thought the 3-year term would give me that ability. If I was able to have that 3-year seat, then I'd be able to really just settle into it and have that long vision.
So I know you mentioned some of the activities you've been involved with in your transition to a new career. What made you decide to run for school committee now that you had that available time?
It was really that it was the appointment period that came up earlier in the fall. A friend of mine who sort of subscribed to the emails that the town would send out about, when a meeting is or when an opening would happen or that type of email, cast, had told me about it. He knew my interest. He knew where I was with the PTO and that I really enjoyed the work. And he just happened to say, did you know that there are not only one, but there are 2 appointments up on school committee? Would you think about it? So yeah, I'd think about it. So then I filled out the forms and did the resume and went through the process. Didn't get selected, but I think in the process of working that out through my, in my head, I just realized that that's what I wanted to do. So I said, well, okay, so I didn't get it this time, but now in, 4 months, when seats actually do open up, I'll throw my hat in the ring.
No, I commend you for that. There were a lot of people that put in their names for those appointed positions, and only a few have run. So that's really good that you took that additional step.
Yeah, it definitely sort of stroked. Again, I knew I had the interest, but it was that I just got a taste of it. And I think I was kind of annoyed isn't the right word. I was going to say, I think I got annoyed that I wasn't appointed. But then again, if you looked at the candidates that were up, there was no love lost. They absolutely picked the right candidates. There were really well qualified people in those pools. So I really didn't feel bad about it at all, but it did okay, I'm going to run.
So what skills do you think you can bring to the school committee?
I think I have a varied educational background, sort of the different career paths that I took myself, sort of the different ways that I've gotten an education. I said I had started college. I didn't finish college until I was late into my 30s, and saw it as an opportunity to go back to school and find I'd sort of reached the peak of what I'd be able to do in my career. There really wasn't anything else to learn. So I decided then would be a good time to go back to school. So I went back to college at Wentworth and got a degree in electrical engineering. And then so it was that kind of progression that sort of just brought me to where, okay, this, now I have the degree, I have the 20 years of experience. Now it's time to go on and try and do more with that and provide more opportunities for my family.
So an important aspect of holding a local office is participating in local elections and attending town meeting. So what has your local voting record been like? And how is your town meeting attendance where town budgets, including the school budget, are voted on?
We do our best, both myself and my wife, to attend every town meeting, every vote. Again, goes back to the sort of being in the room when things are being talked about. And so I believe I have voted in every single local election as far back as I can remember, aside from, I couldn't even tell you when I hadn't. It's got to be 2 or 3 times that I haven't. And it was probably because I was working late or early or whatever. There was some extenuating circumstance. back before we could, do early voting and vote by mail and, all those other sort of wonderful things that had I had them then, I surely would have voted.
Taken advantage of. Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
And if we could have every town meeting outside under a tent on a gorgeous day, I bet more people would go. But it's always been, it's been fun to sort of hear, even when you go through like those 2-night town meetings where the budget's the first night and then, the other stuff that everyone shows up for on the second night. It's to me, it's a good time to sort of get into the weeds and see where the discussions are. Because I think once you're on that level, you start to see how things are connected. So whether it's just, school committee or whether it's public works, whether it's town council, whether it's the health board, like everything on some level is connected. And if you go to at least a handful of meetings, you'll start to see those threads and you start seeing sort of where decisions matter. And you don't have to be the one making the decisions, but it's helpful to be aware of why the decisions are being made, or at least what was in people's heads, what was the thought process for the committee when that was happening. And I've always really enjoyed that.
Good. As you know, the Warrior logo is probably the biggest hot button issue that I remember, possibly in years, if not maybe ever.
Bigger than the parking garage?
Ooh, it's close.
It's close.
It's close. It's close to the parking garage. I forgot about the parking garage. If I like, put that past me somehow.
That's good. That's good.
Somehow I did that. So what were your thoughts on the debate now that the logo has been retired? I know you've seen a lot of the social media postings involving it. And should the current school committee have waited till after the non-binding vote, the April 27th election, to make a decision?
I honestly think one thing would come out of that. You would get public sentiment. You would get the idea of sort of how the greater Wakefield community felt about the logo. I think the school committee had a pretty good pulse on that. I think it came out in the surveys. I think it came out in some of the forums. I think the town seems like it's pretty much 50-50 split. So barring another, I don't know what they would get from it. I think sort of personally, the people's whose voices I've heard the loudest were some of the Native American tribes, the indigenous peoples that spoke at that forum. And it was a hard sort of voice not to listen to and to take to heart. I've heard all of the other voices in the community. I understand that there's a history there. There's a cherished past. There's, I think the loudest or the most impassioned plea I could hear is a parent who's grown up in the town, who grew up as a warrior and has all of that sort of in them and is very much identifies with that sort of passion. And then they have a kid that comes up in the district and they're also a warrior, and there's that connection that they share. And then the idea that, someone wants to sort of take that away, that's shocking. It can be, that is hard. And I thoroughly appreciate that. But I think there's more to the issue. So at the end of the day, do I think they should have waited? I don't know that I personally would have given, I appreciate the voices. I don't know if I would have given them the weight of the forum personally.
No, which is fine. I watched the forum myself. I'm hoping that all of the candidates running in this election took the opportunity to watch that. I know there were some who are pro logo, so I'm hoping that they, took a chance to at least see what the other side was saying. Because all you can do is learn, especially if you're running for a local office. It's important to see all the different perspectives out there.
I think it's critical to listen to everything. If you want to be informed, we ask people to be informed voters. How about being, informed members of these legislative bodies that, we're elected to? You can't just sort of get on a seat and then decide that you're not going to listen to the people that asked you to represent them. So they absolutely need to listen to everybody. But at the end of the day, sometimes people are put in a position where they have to make tough choices, and they're not going to necessarily align with everyone that asked them to sit in that seat.
What do you think the main objective of the school committee is?
I think it's to sort of plot a course for where they see the best direction for Wakefield students, both as it says in the mission statement, to be lifelong learners, but also to be productive members of society, and not just Wakefield society, but as our global society, and take ownership of that and be, intelligent, empathetic citizens. And I think there is a host of tools in sort of the Wakefield public school system that cater to that. Whether it's, the sciences, the arts, sports, we have a whole lot of disciplines that build on those. And so I think it's been successful in that mission. I think we're having challenges now with COVID, obviously. But I think it's in a good place to continue. And so how do we just keep it on that course? And just, do right by the students that we're entrusted with.
Your children are currently going to the Woodville, and I presume after you leave the Woodville, they'll go to the Galvin.
Yep.
So that's 2 new schools. And then presumably they would go to the high school after that. So you have a few years until your children get to that point.
Right.
But what are your thoughts about the building or renovation of the current high school?
Without knowing, so I'm not fully informed on this. I wish to be. I followed, some of the plans, and I know the grants. I think I've seen some of the ideas as to where the building would go, and I think there's even like a third hybrid sort of solution. But I'd want to know more about it before I can make an honestly educated decision. My gut, having attended a ton of town meetings and voted and stayed abreast of what's going on, I think virtually any time that we've rehabbed a building in town, it doesn't really seem to come out that well for us. And I think the high school is old enough that I think we'd be hard pressed to do a service to the kids and ask them to learn and to be like, I don't know if cutting edge is the right word, but we want them to be out there and going to college and being, wherever the next steps past the high school are. I think we owe it to give them the best tools to get there. And that's proper lab space. That's proper, I love the Savings Bank Theater. It's great, but it might be hard to, have a concert there. So I think there are opportunities that a new school would present that maybe we should look at. I've seen some of the data on redoing the space in the high school, and coming from a construction background, I'm just not convinced that's the way to go. I'd have to, but I'm not closed off to it. I need to know more.
No, which is a perfectly acceptable answer. I mean, there's a lot of you've lived here for 14 years. This high school's been a big debate topic for a long time. So looks like we're finally in the stages where, since that money's available, that plans will actually start being made, unlike in years past. It feels like we're closer to some kind of decision.
Right.
As you know, we've crossed the 1-year mark for the pandemic, and plans being made for students to go back to school. Your children, of course, are included in that. How can you reassure families their children will be safe going back to school in a full classroom, full time, without the hybrid model?
I don't know if I'm the one to make that call. In terms of, I could just tell them that as a parent, I feel safe sending my children to school. I know I've been on the weekly COVID calls with district, with Doug and Kara, and I feel informed as to what the steps are and what's being done. I've talked to the principal. I sort of have a close connection with some of the teachers in the school, with the administration. I know the steps that are being taken. I know how seriously they take it. The numbers being what they were, or what they are, sort of coming up a little bit. But there hasn't been a lot of school transmission going back, and the kids have been in school for 6 months now. So we've gotten this far. Lessons have been learned. Everyone that I sort of trust their judgment on seems confident. And I'm willing to, I put them in charge of, my children's education. I I think they'll also keep them safe.
If you are elected, actually, in this case, you will be elected because you're one or two people running for 2 seats.
There's always a write-in.
There's always, you're right, there's always a write-in. You never know. Mickey Mouse could take the day. You never know. If elected, what do you think your key success will be at the end of your term?
If we've made, well, if we've come back from sort of this, because I think the lasting impression of this is going to be felt for years. I think if we're back on track for where we wanted to be 18 months ago, where we saw ourselves, then I'll feel successful. If I've learned more and are making more informed decisions for the community, even not even 3 years from now, 3 months from now, if I'm progressing in that role and I'm just getting better and more in tune with it, I'll feel like I'm being a success. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's a hard benchmark to have until you're in the seat. And then when you're in the seat, it's not just what's being portrayed on Facebook. It's not just what's being portrayed in the item. You're sitting down and you're getting into the minutia of what makes the district work. And so I think I could answer the question better, like perhaps a month after being in that seat, to be able to sit down and go, oh yeah, no, see, I didn't know about that thing or that thing or that thing that's no one else is even looking at. So I think that would, yeah, I'd like to get back to you on that.
I'm going to hold you to that. No,
okay.
This year, the school budget is predicted to increase by 4.88%. There's a chance it may go up. There are some services that will probably need to be provided to catch kids back up, mental health issues. A lot was missed in the past year, as you know. In the past, the school committee has been criticized for spending beyond agreed upon amounts pre-pandemic. How can you work to improve the district and maintain the expectations of the parents and the students and the staff, while also keeping the taxpayers in mind?
Absolutely. I think it's a charge. Like, so we have to provide a service, but we have to do it at a cost, right? And that cost cannot be astronomical, and it can't, rise astronomically. So that's understood. So staying within a frame rate. I don't know if I'm necessarily tied to that static sort of don't go above 3%.
This coming one will be 4.88%.
This one, but pre-pandemic was
pre-pandemic. There was an issue where I think it was around 4%.
Okay.
And it was kind of to make up years over not providing better funding at that time.
So my issue with sort of you do your best, but especially in education, more or less, like theories change, systems change, like you're always sort of chasing the dream of perfection, right? That's the basis of education. Ideas change, textbooks change, practices change, new classes, new services. It's a very fluctuating system. So sort of to be anchored to you absolutely can't do this is hard. I think knowing who you put in charge and trust them that they'll be good stewards, I think would get people a lot farther. So, does it matter that you tie, let's say 4%? Does it matter if you tie to 4% if you're not providing the services, if you're actually not giving everyone the mental health or everyone the tutoring or the emotional services they need so that they can't be their best students? What if we move it? Okay, so you get into 4.5%, but you blow it out of the water and you do an awesome job. Like, so it's subjective in a way. And so I think it's hard to tie that to you need to do this, because what if it causes you to come up short by pennies when the yields would be dollars? Like it's, again, I'd have to see where those decisions are made, because they are made on a dollar by dollar scale. I've seen it. Like I've seen the budgets recently. I've been in the meetings. I've been there where we're talking about HVAC versus projectors versus playgrounds and that delicate balance that happens, and how you fluctuate and how you move money, so that you stay within that. And the people that work for the district, whether it's Doug, Kara, the facilities guys, they're all working for that. Nobody is just going out like, throwing money out the window. Everyone's working hard. So yeah, put people in the right place, and you don't have to worry about the dollars as much. You just know that they're spent well.
Okay, my last question is, we're running out of time. How are you campaigning during the pandemic? How are you putting yourself out there?
I think I'm campaigning less than I would if it was a contested race. I've been sort of out on corners, holding out signs. I've been answering emails, posting sort of on social media where appropriate. And that's sort of it. What I was looking forward to when I was initially thinking that I would run, like before pandemic, was the idea of knocking on doors, having friends that hold office around town. And they describe that as being some of the best parts of it, was getting to know your neighbors. First, that's the reason I like Halloween, is because I get to knock on my random neighbor's doors who I don't see except for once a year, like when we're, trying to beg them for candy. So, but you get to see people that you normally don't talk to and say hi and see how they're doing. And I was looking forward to that.
Well, I'm hoping that in the near future you can get that. Maybe you can still do your door knocking once things calm down and let people know. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. Good luck to you on April 27th. I hope it goes well for the rest of the campaign for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.